Well, g'day flatties and globe defenders. This is Critical Think from Down Under. Well, today we're going to cover the topic of 11 frames. Now, there's 5 videos in this series by Flatzoid. Now, those of you who are not familiar with the history, Flatzoid originally put out this video here, Oops, No Curve, and in it he deleted 11 frames from a sequence to try and make a point. Of course, he was criticised for it, and then he responded to it. There was another video on the same topic, and then that was 2 years ago, and then 6 months ago he did another video, and then again, all trying to justify his deletion of these frames. Now, very recently he's put out some comments which he claims now it was never 11 frames, it was actually just 3. And he's been claiming that now for at least 6 months. So today I'm going to ask the questions there. Did Flatzoid perform a frame void? And how many frames did he delete? Was it 11? Was it 3? Well, actually, the answer is a little bit different to that. So yes, he did perform a frame void, and it was actually 13 frames in fact. How about that? And we'll show you everything in this video. So here's the first video in the series. It's titled Oops, No Curve. So we'll go through this very briefly. This is the original Red's Rhetoric video stabilized. And there's the capsule returning to the ocean, and there's a splash there. Now, according to Flatzoid, there was something we should see here. And there's an apparent horizon. Yes. And oh, look, he gets all excited about an inferior mirage. Now, it's a well-known fact that flatties can suffer from spontaneous ejaculation upon the side of inferior mirages. Well, that certainly seems to be the case here. So he's very excited about this inferior mirage. And he's pointed out the top. Well, this is actually wrong. The inferior mirage, the top of it is where the mirror line is. So then he says, let's see where the capsule hits. Well, of course, the whole point is the capsule is hitting behind the horizon. But Flatzoid is going to try and make a case that this doesn't happen. So he says it hits on the apparent horizon, which is that line there, and not behind the curve. That's his argument. Well, there are several reasons why he is mistaken, and we'll get to those. But first, let's look at the missing frames. So I've loaded several snippets into my Blender so that I can step through them. So the first one is the original uncut version. Now, Flatzoid initially played the whole thing all the way through, and I've loaded Red's original footage. I've set the frame rate to the original, which is 29.97 frames per second. This is important for trying to work out how many frames are missing or not. And Flatzoid initially played it, as I've said, so we'll play that here now, just briefly. So there you go. That was the run through the initial replay. Now, further on in the video, Flatzoid did the frame void thing. Now, I'm just going to step through this. There's the original footage. Now, Flatzoid's got his frozen at that point there. And then you can see the original footage makes a few frames there, and then Flatzoid skips to that frame. So how many frames are actually missing? So we can step back through this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 frames missing. So it's not 11, It's not 3. There's actually 13 frames taken out. And Flatzoid will later claim that this was somehow some kind of accident. Now let's look at inferior mirages. Flatties don't understand optics, they don't understand inferior mirages, they don't understand really anything. They have to manipulate the physical universe. They have to come up with concepts that allow them to think that the Earth is flat. Now if you look very carefully at this diagram, there are some things that are correct on it and some things that are incorrect. Now it's true that warmer water and colder air can cause the formation of an inferior mirage. And yes, there is something that's called a vanishing line, which is the top of the inferior mirage. However, what they claim is that the inferior mirage is some kind of blockage. So normally you would see this behind here if it weren't for the inferior mirage. And this is where they start to go wrong. So let's have a look at another inferior mirage. Now this is early morning. The water's warm, the air's cold, and there is an inferior mirage there. Now flatties will say that that's not the same thing, that's just a reflection. But you can't have that kind of special pleading here. This is the exact same conditions, warmer water, cooler air, causes the surface of the water to become reflective because of the refraction in that layer, in that little bit of air above the water. And this is exactly the same as what's happening out there in the ocean far away. And are we to think that if something were to fall out in the sky and enter the water there, that it would be disappeared, that it would be vanished by the inferior mirage? No, it's just going to fall into the water. And would we see the splash? Yes. Oh my goodness. So there's the apparent horizon there, there's the mirror line, and these pylons in the water there, they're mirrored at that mirror line. So that's what an inferior mirage looks like when it's not way out there in the ocean on the horizon. Here's another one. Now in this one, there's actually 2 mirror lines. There's one mirror line and this line up here, and according to the flat earth theory of inferior mirages, this particular ship should be vanished into this inferior mirage because the mirror line is there. And see that space there between the apparent horizon and the mirror line? Anything that goes into that is supposed to disappear. But this ship has not disappeared. It's got another mirror line there. So that's evidence that the actual reflection off the surface is causing the mirroring, not any magic invisibility cloak. And so we'll just show the mirror lines there. There's 2 mirror lines in that image. How can that be if that was supposed to be a cloak of invisibility? So here's how an inferior mirage is formed. There's this higher temperature boundary layer because the ocean is warmer and the air above is cooler. And then this causes the light to refract upwards instead of the normal downwards. So it's an inverse density gradient. So this angle of incidence here needs to be very small for this because this curve here will be very slight because there's not much bend. And so the light rays there come into this area, they bend ever so slightly and they come out with an angle alpha that may or may not be the same. But the important thing is here the angle of incidence is normally very slight. But in early morning you can get that up to higher so that the inferior mirage, like I showed you before, in early morning gets closer to the observer. Now, for light rays that are coming in at a higher angle, they run into, there's not enough curve to get them coming out again, so you will actually see the ocean as an observer over there. Now I tried to model the flat Earth, the perspective view of the inferior mirage. I really didn't know what to do, so I tried a couple of things. So there's supposed to be this magic cloak of invisibility that somehow forms because, according to Flatzoid and others, that something goes into the inferior mirage apparently. So we've got this ship here, it's submerged into the inferior mirage, and so therefore if it's just some kind of magic cloak, there should be a front because it has thickness. So how does this magic upside down image appear here? Oh, there's a question. How does that happen? Show me the light rays that make that happen. And here's the apparent horizon here because, behind that we can't penetrate this cloak of invisibility here, this magic cloak. And here's another thing. This top part here, we never see the top part. We never see what happens above this particular cloak of invisibility, this wall or whatever you want to call it. If this inferior mirage has thickness and it goes back like that to block the view of anything behind it, we should see the top, but we never do. And so I also tried to think about, well, what about if it's just a magic curtain which hangs in front of anything behind it? And again, we have the problem. How does the magic upside down image appear on the front of this magic curtain? I don't know. And if we were to get higher and look over the top of this curtain, wouldn't we see more of this boat? I've never seen that happen either. So let's have a look at this inferior mirage that has thickness and it tapers away into the end because according to perspective you have to draw it like this, that things get smaller as they get further away. So this magic cloak of invisibility goes back there. Now let's have this capsule come in and fall into that, and you never see it. Let's have it come in there like that. Now, there's going to be a bit of a problem. It's not going to fall at the apparent horizon. It's going to fall back here somewhere. There's going to be a gap between the apparent horizon and where it fell. And then there's the splash above the cloak of invisibility. Okay, so let's try and correct that. Maybe that capsule fell down like this. It went into the magic cloud and then disappeared for a while because you can't see it. And then it came down there, right there at the apparent horizon. Let's see where that's right there. And okay, that's how it would appear to splash at the apparent horizon. But we've got another problem now. Wouldn't this splash be immediately visible and not hidden? Because here it's out the front of the magic curtain and out of the invisibility zone because we can see the apparent horizon there. We should see the splash immediately. But you did not see that, and you'll see more of that. We don't see the splash, so it just doesn't work. Now here's how it really works. You see, the Earth is curved, and there's an inferior mirage near the horizon. And so there's an apparent horizon in front. The actual horizon is at the top of the mirage, and we don't see anything over here because it's beyond the curve. How about that? Now, if this capsule comes down here, it's going to disappear behind the curve. And what happens when the splash comes up from over there behind the curve? You're not going to see it until it comes out from behind the curve again. And is this what we see? That's exactly what we see. So Red's Rhetoric found out that Flatzoid deleted some frames and gave him a lot of stick about it. Well, that's appropriate. And Flatzoid then goes into the response mode saying they're false accusations. But as you've already seen, it's clear that he deleted frames. I've shown that already. So here we go again. Part of his claiming that they're false accusations, he said, look at this. No frames taken out as claimed. Next time, compare both video frames together. Well, okay, I've done that. So we'll just go back a little bit, and this is the section, And we'll step forward here. That's where he says there's no frames taken out. And let's go back to the splash. Oops, wait a minute. What happened there? Oh, there's several frames there that seem to be missing. So there's the videos side by side, and there's some frames there. Oh, they're not on the other video. Oh, there's frames missing. Oh, look at that. So he's claiming that there are no frames taken out. Oh my goodness me. So we come to the next video, another attempt to cover up the missing 13 frames. Now not 11 anymore, but anyway, everybody thinks it's 11 frames, and 11 is close enough. So Flatzoid's wanting to find out what's going on, and he says, apparently I deleted 11 frames on purpose. Well, okay, so if you didn't delete them on purpose, then how did they get deleted? I suppose they just fell out of the renderer while you weren't looking, I suppose. Or maybe the dog ate them. Okay, you think we're going to buy that? And the frames were deleted to fit that flat earth narrative. Well, yes, of course they were. I had two options. One, say sorry for deleting the frames by mistake. Well, not by mistake, deliberately deleting them. And then we all know how that would turn out. I would be labelled a dishonest, lying. Well, maybe you would, maybe you wouldn't. But if you said you deleted them by mistake, that's probably true. And option two, play along with the label given to me unfairly. And well, no, it's not unfairly. And here you try and make out like you want to get exposure out of it. Yeah, right. So I'm sure you're wondering, did I take those frames out deliberately? Well, simple no. Oh, yes. The frames go missing from my videos all the time. It's a common problem. It just so happens that frames just drop out for no reason at all. It's never deliberate, is it? So even now, the very next slide, he's admitting that he did delete them deliberately because he wanted to create a narrative of where he thought the capsule hits. So his whole point was the capsule vanishes into the mirage. Right. We know that's nothing vanishes into a mirage. But anyway, you can clearly see this as it vanishes into the inferior mirage, and then the splash eventually disrupts. Then the effect splashes into sight. Well, no, it doesn't disrupt the mirage at all. It's just a reflection. And just because this disproves the curve, I get attacked. Well, no, it's because you deleted 11 frames and you got such a numpty reason for trying to disprove the curve. That's why you get attacked. Not because you're disproving the curve, it's because you're being so silly. You see, the object observed is indeed just inside the vanishing point of the... Oh. Nope. Just nope. Then there was another video 2 years ago. Now, Rough Moose did an analysis of this particular sequence, and he tried to work out where the splash points were and everything, and you know, that's not too bad. I have to more or less agree with him on that. And if you actually look at that closely, you'll see that his splash point is in front. It's in front of the apparent horizon. Now, Flatzoid doesn't even notice this, and he claims this video as proof that he was right. But if you look at that closely, you'll see that that's in front. It's in front. And we still suffer the same problem where if it's hitting in front of the apparent horizon, how come we can't see the splash? And now 6 months ago, he has another go again. He's trying to justify the fact that he deleted these frames, 13 of them as we found out, and now he gets to this, he's starting to deny this again. And he goes here, FYI, all frames are here, you bullets. Well, of course, this is the part of the video he's just replaying the original. All the frames are in the original. This is so funny because it was like there were 2 apples on the teacher's desk and Flatzoid takes one. And the teacher says, Flatzoid, did you take that apple? And the Flatzoid says, for your information, there's another apple that's still there. So then he's trying to point out the actual argument. He's still deflecting from the fact that he deleted frames, so therefore his whole argument is invalid because he altered reality. He took a video of reality and he took part of it out. And now he's trying to argue, oh, no, don't worry about that, don't worry about that, just look at what I'm trying to say. Well, no, nobody will listen to what you're going to say after you've manipulated the video. So the argument is, it vanished into the mirage. Well, this is a silly argument I've shown. How does that work? If things don't vanish into a mirage, what about the ship I showed that was not vanished into the mirage? And he says is not going behind the curve. Well, that's a very poor argument. And I've already showed that even if you followed the path of the capsule and pretended that it hit near the apparent horizon, it actually would have hit in front. So the capsule shrinks into the mirage. Yeah. If you look closely, you already see the mirror effect. Now here is the classic. Not possible on a curved surface. Now I'm going to say, wait a minute. Weren't you just claiming that this effect acts in a vertical direction? Like things can come down from the sky and disappear into this cloak of invisibility? And now you're trying to say it's related to the surface? So what does it matter whether the surface is curved or flat if you've got this cloak of invisibility hanging above the surface that obscures things that drops down from the sky? I mean, that's number one. And number two, the reflections off a curved surface is perfectly okay. Have a look at this. Who said reflections can't work on a curved surface? I wonder what is the size of that mirage. Well, it doesn't really matter. It's on the surface of the ocean. What's it matter? The top of the mirage is the real horizon. And not quite where you had it. But anyway, this is the argument from the ballers. I took frames out. Yes, you took frames out. That alters reality. Somebody's taken a picture of reality and you've taken the frames out to prove your point. How silly is that? They were not taking the argument for what it is. The capsule hits the apparent horizon inside the mirage. Well, no, it does not. There's no inside of a mirage. The mirage is formed on the surface of the water. The inside of the mirage doesn't exist like that. Now I've switched to the blender again, and here's a funny thing. This he says, the argument from the ballers, I took frames out, and he's showing the section again where he took the frames out. Have a look at this. There's the capsule above the surface, right? And next frame, boing, there you go, frames out. And he claims that shows the capsule hits the apparent horizon. And that's quite deceptive to skip those 13 frames and make it look like that. And then very recently, in fact, while I was already preparing this video, Flatzoid's made another attempt about trying to defend his 11 frames, and here he's claiming there's no 11 frames, and he makes a claim that it's only 3. Let's have a little bit of a look at that. He's actually using the video by Rough Moose. This is not even Flatzoid's video. This is not even the one that he deleted the 13 frames. This is a completely different video. So what kind of sleight of hand deception is this he's trying to pull here? Oh, let's listen to some of it.
Well, I hope some of you can actually count there. Does that look anywhere near 11 to you?
And the funny part about this is in that particular video there's no frames missing. This is all the frames are there.
Let's count. 1, 2, 3. Wow. Not 11. 3.
He's counting the number of frames where the capsule has gone behind the curve, saying, see, that's not 11.
1, 2, 3.
So I'll just show you here that there's no frames missing from this particular video. So there's the capsule just above the surface of the water. There's it entering the mirror line or going behind the curve there. And then 1, 2, 3 frames, you don't see anything. And then the splash starts to appear above the horizon and is reflected in the inferior mirage. But you can see that there's nothing hitting the apparent horizon. Nothing hitting nothing. So the other thing to take note is sometimes there's no inferior mirage, and I know that in these cases the flatties have to invent a different excuse. So that's when they reach deep into their excuse bag and come out with something else, because inferior mirage is no longer any use in photos like this, where this ship is clearly behind the curve. Now here's another great sequence of video I took. And this is pretty much impossible on a flat Earth. How are you going to explain this with vanishing points and limited angles and things like that? Because the angle to the front ship is the exact same as the angle to the rear ship. But one of them appears to be underwater. Have a look at that. Oh, can't wait to hear the bollocks that comes out of that. Well, anyway, I hope you've enjoyed today's video. It's been a lot of work to put this together, but you can clearly see that there were 13 frames deleted in order to suit a narrative. And now Flatzoid's trying to change his story to say that it's only 3 frames by coming up with a video that's not even the same one. So, Flatzoid, you've been busted, man. Oh, I don't know. I'm sure you'll come up with a lot of rubbish after this to try and cover up the fact that you've been completely busted here, mate. So there you go. There's one ship passing another. One of them is beyond the curve a lot. The other one is beyond the curve a little bit. Have a nice day. Well, it's been a long video, and for those of you who have stuck around this long, let's do a little bit of a karaoke sing-along. It's There's a Hole in My Render, sung to the tune of There's a Hole in the Bucket. There's a hole in my render, dear sleepy, dear sleepy. There's a hole in my render, dear sleepy, a hole. Then fix it, dear Flatzoid, dear Flatzoid, dear Flatzoid. Then fix it, dear Flatzoid, fix it. But how shall I fix it, dear sleepy, dear sleepy? But how shall I fix it, dear sleepy? But how? With a lie then, dear Flatzoid, dear Flatzoid, dear Flatzoid. With a lie then, dear Flatzoid, a lie. But the globe has exposed it, dear sleepy, dear sleepy. But the globe has exposed it, dear sleepy, exposed. Double down then, dear Flatzoid, dear Flatzoid, dear Flatzoid. Double down then, dear Flatzoid, double down. But the globe is still troll me, dear sleepy, dear sleepy. But the globe is still troll me, dear sleepy, troll me. Another lie then, dear Flatzoid, dear Flatzoid, dear Flatzoid. Another lie then, dear Flatzoid, dear Flatzoid, another lie. Well, that'll do. That's enough verses. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.